on the instrument. So let's check that out. So what I've got today for you guys is I have a Jean-Luc Ponty lick, and as I take you through my practice, I'm going to try to show you some of the most common pitfalls that players fall into when doing this type of work, and hopefully give you some powerful principles that you can take into your practice. If you haven't, now is a great time to download the worksheet. I made a little worksheet outline, and you can click on the link in the post right below this if you're on the fan page. So click on that. Get the worksheet. You can print it up or follow along on your iPad, and hopefully that'll make this lesson even more helpful for you. Okay, so the lick is from Sunday Walk by Jean-Luc Ponty, and it goes something like this. All right, there we go. Simple, easy. So one of the reasons why I chose this lick is because it really features a lot of note targeting. Some people call this framing, and that's just when you take notes of a triad, in this case B flat, and just surround the notes. So some of you may have practiced this incredibly pointless, boring exercise at some point in your life. Things like that. But of course, that's not particularly musical or inspiring, and the best way to learn any new concepts is by studying the masters. What better person to do it than Jean-Luc? So let's get started, and to do that, we're going to just work on breaking down this lick. One of the biggest and most important skills, whether you're a classical player working on a specific passage, or whether you're a jazz musician or other improvising musician working on a lick like this, is breaking it down in a way where you're really going to be able to digest it effectively, right? So the first thing I'm going to do, maybe a little counterintuitive, but I'm going to take it out of its original key. I don't want to deal with any open strings initially because I want to understand all of the intervallic information and harmonic information without the use of open strings. So if you're transcribing a fiddle play or something like that, it's usually in first position. We're going to take it out of first position, and then we can bring it back to those easy keys a little bit later. Okay, so I transpose this, I should say, to F. So let's just warm up on an F7 chord, and then we'll play this lick in F mixolydian. Okay, so here's F7. And first, let's just play dominant 7 chord on F7. We're going to put our fourth finger on the root, and we're going to do all of this in fourth position. Cool. Now, let's just add one note and turn it into a pentatonic scale. Okay, we're going to add the fourth like this. Last but not least, we're going to play the full slip version of that scale so we can get all of the notes within the scale. Here we go. Now, let's play the complete lick, but now in F. 1, 2, 3. I need to try that again. 1, 2. Man, sounds like I need to practice. Well, there is the lick in F7. Now, if you're having any trouble following along with what I just did, no problem. Download the worksheet, follow along as best you can, and I promise there'll be a lot of cool principles that you can still take with you, no matter what lick or what style of music you're working on. So once we've taken it out of the open string position and we're fingering all of the notes, the next thing that we have to do is we need to break this down into bite-sized, digestible pieces. Some of you may have heard that phone numbers are 7 digits for a reason. Once we get more than 7 characters, things are hard to remember and hard to, they don't stick in our brain as easily. Well, it's kind of the same for working on motifs and ideas. Once we get above 6 or 7, man, it just doesn't stick to our fingers and doesn't stick in our brains as well. So while it's laudable to be able to take this lick, which is like 3 bars, and play it in different keys, you're not going to get a lot of gold out of that. The real gold is going to happen when we break down these individual target notes. And I've done that for you here on the worksheet to rehearse letter A, B, C, and D. And for today, we're just going to take letter B by itself. I'm going to trust you to apply everything you've learned to letter A, C, and D on your own. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take letter B and we're going to work on our rhythmic flexibility. Our goal in doing any type of practice, whatever you're ever working on, is to expand as a musician, right? So unlike in our classical practice when we might just be working to refine a certain lick or nail that shift, when we're working on, from an improvisational perspective, we're trying to expand our rhythmic vocabulary, our harmonic vocabulary, our coordination between the bow and the left hand, and so on and so forth. And you really can get all of those in one practice session if you're really focused and disciplined on that. So let's start with rhythmic displacement. So we're just going to take letter B, which is really cool. It's just kind of a target note for the 7th of the chord. There we go, landing on the 7th. And let's move it around each part of the beat, both on the beat and on the and of the beat. We could go to the E and the as well, but I think you'll get the point. So here we are with our F7 again. We'll start on beat 1. Now let's try it on the and of 1. 1. Now let's try it on beat 2. 1. Now let's try it on the and of 2. 1, 2. Now let's try it on beat 3. 1, 2. On the and of 3, 2, 3. On beat 4. 1, 2, 3. And on the and of 1, 2, 3, 4. Now that may be easy for some of you and a great exercise for others, but I also want you to keep in mind that as I was doing that, I kept the same bowing as the original. As I changed the placement of the beat, I actually wanted to reverse the bowing. That would have felt easier for me and less awkward, but that's part of the process of building, right? And I really want to encourage you, whether it's an awkward fingering or an awkward bowing, don't avoid the awkward. Run towards the awkward, right? This is a little bit of a paradigm shift from our classical practice where maybe we're just focusing on, we're trying to find that exact fingering that feels great for the Beethoven sonata. And when we find it, we stick with it, right? That's the one we're going to use. We write it in. I want to encourage you to take a very, very different approach. When you find things that are awkward, run towards them. That's where there's a hole in your knowledge, a gap in your technique. That's where you get better. Okay, so just a thought there. Okay, so now that we've developed a little bit of rhythmic flexibility with this, right? We can play it in different parts of the beat. Now let's try to use that. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to work on being able to approach that little motif we just learned from below or from notes coming from above. There's nothing more important in our practice than working on transitions. And in classical practice, that's like when you screw up in a lesson because you practiced the shift, but you didn't practice getting in and out of it. Well, in this case, I'm talking about the ability to transition between, scale brain, you're just kind of jamming along, and lick brain, right? Where you take this idea out of your idea bank and it's just there for you. Wherever you are on the beat, wherever you are. This seems so simple, but most people don't spend nearly enough time working on it, right? And so the key is to spend a lot of time working on a very small amount of material. Let me just give you an example of that. So I'm going to stay in F7, or in F mixolydian, I should say. And let's just try, so I'll approach it from below. Cool. Now, let me try approaching it from above. Oh, and it looks like in our worksheet I have a little typo here. It's the same thing, so I'll just improvise something. So notice in the second one I just played, I actually hit the lick on the and of two, right? So the ability to be able to just hear and feel that lick anywhere in the beat, in any context, coming in and out of anything else, really takes a lot of time. Remember, the gold happens when we spend a lot of time working on a very, very small amount of material. Very few people can do something like that, even with a very simple lick, without stuttering, hesitating, losing their groove. It really, really has to be ingrained, and it can take a week or two, even on a lick that simple, but it's worth it, right? Because anything that sticks changes your playing forever. Okay, now, it's also really good to take something like this and to be able to manipulate the harmonic material. So right now we're playing over an F7 chord, right? And you can hear it's all the harmonic information's in there, but it's great to also be able to turn this into, I don't know, let's make it an F minor 7 chord. How would that sound? Let's see here. That wasn't very good. Let me try one more time. Better, right? Or playing it over an F major, turning it into an F major chord. Like that. Very, very cool, right? So there's all kinds of possibilities, all kinds of things we can do with this to get even more gold out of it. Now, one of the things I love about these target note licks is that they have such strong internal logic, right, harmonically and otherwise, that we can really use them in almost any situation, any musical situation, any style. And so I thought this would be a great jumping off point for talking about building our harmonic concept by going outside of the key, side slipping. Now, for those of you that don't know what side slipping is basically where we play a half step above or a half step below a certain key. Now, a lot of the time when jazz educators will talk about side slipping, they'll say, yeah, you know, you go outside and, you know, you listen and you use your ear and just experiment. Now, that type of advice is basically code for, I don't have any principles to teach you, I'm copping out. Sort of the classic cop-out of music educators. Just go experiment. You'll find, it's like, I've been experimenting, it doesn't sound good, that's why I'm going to a teacher, dude. Anyway, so this idea of side slipping, I thought I would show it to you in the context of an actual lick, and that's probably my first piece of advice if you're working on this idea and getting it into your playing. You want to start with a reference point, right? Stuff that you actually know, and using a lick that you're working on and that you played, and then getting it into this space where you're able to kind of manipulate it in your hands and in your ear is a great jumping off point instead of just trying to like start with the scale and going to town, right? So let's take just the beginning of this lick and I want to show you just a few basic principles to approach side slipping and maybe get more musical results, or at least give you an organized way to think about practicing it. So with side slipping, as I mentioned, the most common thing is to go a half step up or a half step down. And the easiest, most musical way to do this is by using very smooth voice leading, using a half step or a whole step to achieve this. So if I'm practicing this lick, what if I went instead of, what if I went, right, changed it by a half step and came right down from the C to the B. Now I'm in F sharp, right? Right, instead of F. So that'll sound like this. I'll play it slow once, and why don't I do it with the background so it's easier to hear. I like that sound. We can also use this principle to side slip going down. Like, for example, if I wanted to go from F and kind of side slip down to E for a minute, let's see here. Instead of going down to the A, what if I made it a whole step? That's still pretty smooth voice leading, right? It's close. Okay, that would put me into E, and then I'll just go back up, find my way back to F. Let's see if I can do that. Kind of cool. Let's try faster. Up. Not bad. Another way, outside of the using half steps and whole steps, which is probably the most obvious way to approach this, is to use other intervals, right? To sequence intervals. A sequence, when we repeat something, it tends to stick in our ear and it tends to make a lot of musical sense, both to our ears and to the audience's ears, right? So, we can take an interval. Let me see if I can find one here. Let's, okay, so I'm going to take this third, A to F, right, major third, and why don't I sequence that down so that I'm playing that major third twice, but then a half step below, and that gets me to the key of E, right, a half step below the root. So that'll sound like this. Kind of cool. Let's listen to it with an F7 chord in the background. I'll play it slow first. Hope I can remember what I just did. Yeah. We can also use that type of sequencing and actually create entirely new rhythms out of the motif we had by displacing rhythmically the second half of the motif. Think of it like splicing, right? Where if you have something, you have part of the motif, and then you use an interval to modulate, and then you've pushed the second half further. Let me demonstrate that instead of talking about it. So let's see here. Okay, so I'll use, this is a whole step, and I'm going to repeat it. So from D to C to D sharp to C sharp, and that takes me into F sharp. Now notice that when I repeated that interval, the lick doesn't have that, so now I've pushed the end of the lick over by a half a beat. I've rhythmically displaced it. Let's listen to that, and hopefully I'll remember it. Let's try. That's a very cool sound. Let me try that an octave up. Might be easier for you to hear. One more time. Right? Really cool sound. You could even use displacement, again, coming out of the lick. So you pushed it over by a half a beat, and then you could push it back onto the beat if you wanted. Again, we're getting into all kinds of cool rhythmic worlds. Aren't you glad you practiced your rhythmic flexibility in the beginning, being able to put this motif anywhere. It really pays dividends for you. And again, this is stretching our mind, it's stretching our fingers, it's stretching our ear, it's stretching our groove. It's such a cool exercise and way to get your feet wet with side slipping. So let me try, I'm going to play, and I'm going to use the same half step or whole step to sequence and modulate out. Okay, so here's another whole step. So I'll repeat that, which will take me back to F. See, I use that whole step to get me into F sharp, and I use the same idea of using a whole step sequence to get me back out of it. Really, really cool concept. So now I've added a beat to the lick, but it's using this simple idea of sequencing. So let's hear how that sounds. I'm kind of curious. So we'll try it slow. A little bit faster. Not bad. Let's try that an octave up again, just so you can really hear it. One more time. So that's the basic concept of how I would practice a lick. And as you see, I went through different rhythms. After breaking it down, I went through different rhythms. I worked on being able to approach the lick from above and below on different parts of the beat, right? And then I worked on taking it out harmonically. Now, the next thing that I would do, if you're really feeling adventurous, is to try it with different frames. So if you checked out the Improviser's Guide to the Cello, which I know some of you have, you probably know that there are 3 different frames on the cello, and frame just means what note you're starting from. So don't worry if that's a new term, it doesn't matter for now. But what we can do is we can, instead of starting with our 4th finger on the root and practicing the region we were just working on, we can start with our 2nd finger on the root and do the same thing, like this. Oh, why don't we warm up the same way? So here's our dominant 7 chord. And then we're going to turn it into a pentatonic. Now let's play the entire slip scale. So now we can play right? And again, a couple of those fingerings, even as I play it, especially the very beginning. Is kind of awkward, right? But again, do not run from the awkward. The awkward is good. There are other parts of the lick that feel great in frame 2, and that's really the whole point, is we don't want to be stuck only knowing a lick or only being able to play an idea from a certain opening finger, or having our root on the 1st finger or the 4th finger, because in real improvisation, we don't know where we're going to be on the instrument. We need to know our instruments better than that. Right? We really do. We need to be able to have the control to be able to play this from anywhere. Let's try with our 1st finger on the root really quickly. And for this, it's getting really muddy down here in F, and because it covers 3 octaves, I'm going to change keys. Why don't we try it for frame 1 Sorry, your worksheet says something different, but for frame 1, let's try it in the key of C, okay? And we're just going to play the same lick. So we'll warm up on that lick, or we'll warm up with the arpeggio, excuse me. So here's C7. And here's the pentatonic. And here's the whole scale. Now, we can play something like this. Again, a few little awkward points there. Doesn't matter. We want to master all of those. And remember to break the lick down. That's really the key. So I hope you got something out of this practice routine. If you didn't have a chance while you were watching, you can go again and download the worksheet that went along. Maybe check it out again. Wherever you are in your creative journey, there's a lot of gold I hope you'll get out of this. And you know, if there's one big takeaway that I tell all of my students, it's that you shouldn't get bored when you practice. One of my favorite human beings, I should say, is this guy named Derek Sivers. And if you haven't heard of him, you should check out his TED Talks. He founded CD Baby, and he's sort of an amateur musician, but he's just an overall genius. And when he was being interviewed by Tim Ferriss and asked what his magical power was, he said, "My magical superpower is that I don't get bored easily. I get into something and I stay into it." And it's so easy to just learn a lick and then move on without really developing the other aspects of our musicianship. I remember when I was studying with Richard Aaron at the Cleveland Institute of Music, whenever someone made a mistake on a passage, he asked them immediately, "Show me 5 different ways to practice that. Show me 5 different ways to work on that same lick." And that was the sign of mature musicianship in his mind, you know, that you had that kind of approach to learning, you know, to really know something from the inside out, upside down, backwards and forwards, so they would really, really be automatic. So thanks for watching. I'm going to hang out on Facebook Live, or not on Facebook Live, I don't think, but I'm going to hang out on Facebook for a little while after this. If you have any questions, type them up, and I'll stick around and try to answer them all for you. And if you're interested in creative cello playing, you know, getting beyond, you know, covers and here's a chop, and have you heard of a pentatonic scale? If you're advancing beyond those really kind of baby basics, the Improviser's Guide is the place for you. So you can check that out, and we'd love to have you as part of that, that community as well. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.